So there's been a lot of talk on the, Warriors back in the NBA Finals. We're in the Bay Area. That's kind of a big deal around here. A lot of people have been asking me, especially at work too. I get a bunch of sports injury questions, and it's usually ACL or things really like that. But this is very uncommon where we had like a broken arm, a fractured arm, which is the same thing as a break and fracture, same thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, he had a broken arm. How is he be able to come back? I think it was like 4.5 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that.
Nuts.
May 4th to June 5th or whatever it is. So like literally 4 weeks coming back. And so what happened was he had they can't let out everything, but a fracture with kind of how he hurt it with the outstretched arm. It's called a foosh injury, F-O-O-S-H, fall on outstretched arm, outstretched hand.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So foosh, F-O-O-S-H. So what that does is when you hit the ground like that, and it buckles straight back.
Cool, can we pause real quick? James, is that how you fractured your forearm? Is that how you fractured your forearm?
Did you fall on it?
Did you fall on it? Or was it?
I got hit.
Oh, you got a helmet
to arm.
Helmet
Right in the
to
middle
arm.
of that bitch.
Okay, got it. I thought it was the...
We'll talk about that in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
different.
All
right.
Sure. Okay, cool. We'll bring that back.
But yeah, so fall on outstretched hand, they have a lot of injuries where it has that, or they have a lot of shoulder sprains. But this one specifically, so you have two bones in your forearm.
Okay.
You have your radius and your ulna. And the way to remember this is radius is R, thumb is T. RST.
RST.
Like QR, like the alphabet.
Yeah.
QRST. So radius is on the thumb side, always. So what the radius does is when you rotate it, you have a little bit of head. And so it comes around like a circle, and that's what kind of rotates on your humerus. So your big bone, your humerus bone, classic, it has the two like little nubs on the bottom and stuff that fit in. And the radius actually rotates on it. And your ulna, which is on the pinky side, comes all the way straight down. That's that little bone you feel right there.
Got it.
So that bone is chilling there. That's kind of, you have a little divot where your humerus goes in, okay? And so the radius, when it rotates like that, so when you rotate it open, so you go palm up, you supinate your hand, and you push down, they're
so
both equally straight back. And so that has contact. So when you hit the ground, the radio head came in. So that little like bone, instead of having the two little things on the side like Halloween bones, it actually is just kind of a circle at the end. So what happens is the big bone hit it, and then they cracked the surface of it. I'm trying to think of a good, like if you hit a plate with a hammer, like that plate just cracks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's basically what happened with
the impact of how it all happened.
And so the fracture, so because he came back so quickly, that means it's called what's a closed or a non-displaced fracture, which means if a displaced fracture, like if you break it and it moves. And so it has to be either reset internally, surgically, whatever it is. A non-displaced is just it cracks, but it stays in the same spot.
So he's probably gonna have to get. Well, actually, did he get surgery?
So he didn't, because it was a non-displaced. It stayed where it is. That circle was in there. It's just cracked.
Got it.
It's like if you ever
play through
set
it
something
or
down,
like try to rehab it and then possibly get surgery after the season. Kind of
maybe if he needs it.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be further.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So a lot of time they can heal on their own, and it comes down to it takes about 28 days total to go through what's called a inflammation, proliferation, maturation process, the healing process.
Got it.
It's about 2 days of inflammation, 48 to 72 hours, and then 7 days for proliferation, and then up to 21 to 28 days is maturation. So what happens? Inflammation, swelling, everyone kind of knows what goes on. It gets really hot. They get histamines, prostaglandins, a bunch of other just cells basically that your body sends to the area to blow it up and protect it. That's what it wants to do.
Got it. So that's what it did. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why if you like hit your arm or whatever, you get like a bump, you'll get swelling. It's your body's trying to protect the area and just put like giant cushions, like little packing peanuts inside there. And then proliferation is when you starts building of like collagen fibers or connective tissues or start getting like, it's called a soft callus bone, when you just get calcium build up around it and it's still kind of like bendable and kind of squishy. It's still sensitive. And then you get maturation.
That's going to be the starting of the rebuilding process, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of rebuilding it.
Yeah, so protection and then starts the rebuilding of that. Okay, cool.
So that's when you kind of want to strengthen a little bit, but like within control, like be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
About 20 to 28 days is called maturation, which is when it gets a hard callus is what it's called.
Got it.
So you get all of that calcium buildup and that stuff in there and it gets really hard. and it basically fills in and even makes like a little. It might be a little bit different shape. That's like if you ever seen someone with a broken arm or something, or broken collarbones are really easy to see this. If they go up into the side a little bit, that's just how it heals. That's just how your body is now.
Got it.
And so it might be a little bit like herky-jerky, like it doesn't really move the same way, like it's a little less smooth, but that's what the rehab's gonna be. And so he was probably getting round the clock, 6 to 7 hours a day of rehab. You can get things from like ultrasound. They have things called like class 4 laser. Ultrasound helps like vibrate the tissue, warm it up from the inside out. Helps with vascularization, which is like blood flow, things like that to the area. They have things like class 4 laser. I guarantee they were using. That does, if you remember anything from like high school biology, something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So what happens is you have, and you should probably, you probably know this, that, and then you have aerobic and anaerobic, right?
Yeah.
So ATP does the anaerobic, the non-oxygenated source, so that basically supercharges your cells to increase the healing process in the area. But it's a little aggressive, can cause some more inflammation, so it's not for everything, but I'm sure he was getting that every day. Like we use one of those in the clinic, one of the lasers. It's awesome. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he was doing that, getting a bunch of motion.
So how long, like obviously he's a professional athlete, so he gets the best treatment.
Right.
Especially for the Warriors, I'm pretty sure they have some of the best. For a regular person to do this and go through everything, it would probably take how long?
So the thing is, a regular person isn't going through a professional basketball game. So to return to your regular life, probably a similar time frame, like 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
That's what I would say. If you had just a small non-displaced radial head fracture, I would say 4 to 6 weeks, give or take.
Cool.
You know, you're also more of a regular human. It's going to depend. Also, a 20-year-old kid's going to heal a little bit faster than a 70-year-old lady. You know what I'm saying?
Makes sense. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So you generally give them 4 to 6 if they're kind of sub 40 or so. If they're kind of over that or into the 60, 65, you might be like, all right, like 6, then 6 to 8, like doing things. But what are you really going to be doing that's that bad anyways?
Yeah, true.
So like a general 4 to 6 is not a bad time frame for someone with that anyways. With a non-displaced, just small fracture like that.
Cool, 4 to 6, but like that's the thing about like what we're talking about, you're about to say too, is for a professional athlete to come back to full strength is different than
you literally have to be 100%.
That's nuts.
And so that's
in a month.
Which is why it's still kind of wild that he's able to do it. But one, the type of player he is, he's not like shooting the whole time. But it is a shooting arm. Oh no, non-shooting arm. It was his. No, it was left arm. So it was a shooting arm.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit tougher to kind of come in, but because you have to rotate your arm to shoot and rotate your arm to come back. So he has to have kind of the full thing. So it's still tough, but it's still amazing that he came back and was able to play professional, like an NBA game in 4.5 weeks. That's still even on the lower side of what like a regular person should be doing to go back to their regular life. So that's kind of wild.
Especially when you're going through, like what you said, 6 to 7 hours probably.
Oh yeah, he was going through crazy rehab. I'm sure. I mean, it's not like grueling because you can't really do. You can only do so much anyways. You can over rehab and overstretch, and that's like a thing. You don't want to do that. So I'm sure he was just getting around the clock. The hot packs that you see, or the things that they see wrapped around their arm, hot packs.
Hot packs.
So they have, usually they're in I'm assuming they look kind of like similar like we do. They put them in a hydroculator, which is like they have like these clay. Hydroculator is just like a metal bin that keeps water warm, and so they have these like clay little cells in a bunch of like, I don't know, like rectangles and stuff. So they put those into like a casing, and then they put some towels over it so it doesn't burn you. And that water is probably 140 to 150. So it's pretty warm.
But that's why, exactly.
That's why there's always a bunch of towels on it, and it's just like wrapped up.
I can't remember if we were talking about this on the first episode, but it goes back to about how you're supposed to, or we were kind of taught wrong, where it's ice, heat, and then
rest, ice, compression, elevation. So that's why all the professional athletes, they always got heat. Those knee things with a little brace on it. That's I'm assuming from what I think it's like a compression device, and it's got some kind of heating element to it.
Yeah.
So they can have like coils or electric heating blanket, but like to the nth degree, and they probably cost $5,000 per thing, or something like that. But heating, always heat it up. Increases blood flow. Blood is how you heal. Like once you really think about it, it makes sense. But it's kind of like, I didn't know any better.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is what it is. But there are times where you should ice. If a doctor ever tells you to ice, just do what they say.
Yeah.
Don't think you know better. But heat is what everything's kind of turn into at this point.
Yeah, that's cool. Then that's the cool thing about like now that we're in 2022, that there's so much more science and things that we can look back to, and much more information that we're getting now, especially with the internet. That's how people want to, give out more information, kind of like us.